Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to Green Chat. My name is Cleeze, and this is a place where you can ask me questions, and I can give you my opinion to hopefully formulate your own on the upcoming MMO Pantheon Rise of the Fallen. Today we're doing something slightly, I guess I normally step out of bounds. Not really out of bounds, but it is really asking the question, is Pantheon the MMO for you? Now, don't look at this in the sense of like or absolutism or something like that, where I'm not looking to be right or like say this is the way it is, but it's really to get you thinking about what VR means when they say this will be a challenging MMO and what does that mean to you. I kind of go into what it means to me and what I think VR means by this, and what we could expect when they say this is going to be a challenging MMO. So hope you enjoy, and let's get right to it. This is what I wanted this to be about. If you are like Chobo is right now in the chat, I'm going to be pretty focused on this is going to be like class time. I don't even want it to feel like that. But for me to get my point across, I'm going to have to do this as fast as I can within a decent measure and have it make sense. It might even not get done tonight. I'm just going to do my best. I'm going to have a little sip of this drink and then we're going to start. And I think this is going to be very controversial. Controversial? Yeah, for sure. That's the point. Is it the point? So the question is this: are you hardcore enough, are you hardcore enough for Pantheon Rise of the Fallen? Is Pantheon Rise of the Fallen the game for you? Is it your jazz? Okay, that's what this is really kind of trying to answer here. And why I'm even talking about this is because I'm going across the forums. I'm going through Reddit, I'm going through Daybake forums, I'm going through Pantheon Rise of the Fallen forums, and one thing that consistently keeps coming up is challenging hardcore. What does that mean to you? And how should we see it in Pantheon? And I think I've come to a reasonable position, at least, to ask a question. Hey, what is Pantheon's challenge? What is the challenge behind Pantheon? Is it just increasing time to do everything? Is increasing time to kill, making travel more meaningful by making it take longer? It just sounds like you're adding time to everything. Is that really what challenge is? I think there's a disconnect between current MMO players and old MMO players. So to bridge that disconnect, I'd like to talk, I'm going to use like my focal point as rating. So before we begin, timer 30 minutes. We're going to do this because I need to stay on track. So we're going to set a timer for 30 minutes and rock out this question. Is Pantheon good for you? Is it the right fit? Are you good enough to be a Pantheon player? What does that even mean? So I feel like the crowd that usually gets kind of underdogged a lot or douched on a lot, or whatever you want to call it. Not douched on, that's terrible, guys. But really kind of gets overlooked in the sense of, I feel like they're being subject to like, oh, you're those guys, kind of, is people that played old school MMOs. And I think they're the ones that jump to more of in defensive, like they get more defensive when this comes up, or their ability to play MMOs in a hardcore or challenging sense gets challenged. And then when they try to bring it back to something more like, I don't know, a way to communicate what is challenging, I think the waters get a little muddied and they start using things like, well, I don't like raiding with heads-up displays and everything telling me what's going on as a defense, which if you've done those raids, especially in World of Warcraft or Final Fantasy or any other, what is it? What is that stupid? Yeah, WildStar, just happen to have that up. I think it kind of takes away from your position, to be honest. So for right now, I'm going to defend you guys. And then I'm going to jump into, defend the WoW guys, for example. I'm going to use WoW and EverQuest as an example. I'm just going to talk about the rating real quick and how difficult it actually was and what was really hard about it. So let's jump over to EverQuest. And EverQuest, I personally never got really hardcore into the rating. I've done a lot of reading. It was actually kind of difficult to find a lot of material on it as far as raid guides go and what it is to be a raid leader in, some of you guys could fill me in on this, in EverQuest. But it was pretty insane. You had a raid leader, and then the raid leader had a, let's see here, you could do, let's see. You could have around like 40 to 80 people. I almost want to like pull up a little chart here so I don't get lost in my thoughts. Let's do that. Let's pull up Notepad. So you had a raid leader, boom, raid leader, and then you had the master looter, and then you had the main puller, then you had a backup puller, whatever, and then you had a assist master looter in case you got overwhelmed, assist master looter. It just keeps growing here. And then you had players from each group. So let's say you had 5 groups, 6 groups. You had, let's call them main players from groups, and they would control the groups. And then you had raid chats where you informed everybody what you're doing. Everybody had to join there. And you had to control this system across 40 to potentially 80 to 100 players in mini raids. And the pace was really important, and the pressure was on. I mean, just imagine that, being the raid leader in a situation where 40 to 80 people are looking to you for direction, and the amount of information that's flowing up your chain of command almost is substantial. And then the technicalities of the raids you're doing were very real. Like there was nothing that was that easy to pull off. There was a lot of knowledge that you had to know. You had to know a lot about different classes and their capabilities. You had to know about the environment. You had to know about the loot tables. You had to know what was good for who. You had to know people below you, had to know what was going on. It was very intense, and it would take a lot of time. Now, I was kind of looking at how long it would take to raid an EverQuest, and I think it's actually relative how long it takes to do progressive raiding in EverQuest as to it would take in other MMOs like World of Warcraft, or sorry, there's a weird noise happening. World of Warcraft, or like I love using World of Warcraft because I did it so much, or what is it? Final Fantasy. But anyways, focusing on EQ, the challenging part of EverQuest was knowing your position in this role, having the patience to go to these raids, and then fulfill your role as best as you could, and not step out of boundaries, not break out of what your role and responsibility was, and following close to direction. Like you couldn't, like I think casters usually started DPSing at 80% because you could easily throw off these mobs because they would be alive for so long. So the raid leader would give you direction, and you had to follow it to a T, or things would go bad. If you wiped, it would take you could spend all night just dying if you made a mistake, if the raid didn't fall in line with the direction of the raid leader, or if the raid leader was a little unsure. You could see how easily that would tumble out of control. So what would pretty much happen is the raid leaders would be far and few in between for the most part, and a lot of the people that he entrusted with these responsibilities were also far and few in between, and they had a ton of power back in those days, and a ton of responsibility. Pressure was big, and you can imagine the appeal of this type of system if you enjoyed fulfilling those roles. You pretty much had like a complete command structure, and information flowing up, and then you shooting information down to that information. And yeah, and then you had to keep the raids moving. You would call breaks, whatever. And it would take hours. You could be in there easily. You could be easily in there for 6 hours and get absolutely nothing done if you had a kind of a sloppy raid leader. If you had an awesome raid leader, you could be in there for 6 hours and get a ton of stuff done in these raids. And these raids are actually usually very large in scope. So that is EverQuest. Man, where am I at? Boom. Okay, good. We're making good time. Making good time, boys. So that's EverQuest, and that's raiding. And it was very, very challenging. But I think the challenge was mostly represented in the scale of combat. When you were doing pulls, there was pulls that were like 15 mobs. Usually having a pulls that were 15 mobs large is not abnormal. And all of those 15 mobs are very deadly. They got to get crowd controlled. They have to get killed in a certain order. Off tank to tank. You had multiple tanks going on. Stuff like that. And that all had to get controlled very quickly. And it was kind of like a battlefield pretty much. So in EverQuest, you almost had like a battlefield as far as raiding goes. And that's on specific types of raids. Yeah, sometimes you would just encounter like a dragon, just like one singular mob. There would always be trash getting up to any singular mob, but sometimes it was just one bad guy that you had to fight. And that was very challenging. But in most cases, it was mini mobs, and the trash was really the difficult thing to get through. And then you got to the main, the main named, and it was rough. But in any regard, it was for every character. You had to know how to play your class. You had to know the zone. You had to know how to best manage your DPS. You had to pull a really good DPS and all that stuff in it. And it wasn't, at least at the higher levels, it was difficult to DPS well because you couldn't just damage or DPS. Sounds like there's like an animal in my wall or something. You couldn't just DPS like you do in mini games that are out now. You couldn't think about it in the sense that, all right, kill this guy as best I can, as most efficiently as I can, and then we go on to the next one. In EverQuest, you could be in combat for an hour or so, and you're having to maximize yourself, trying to project what's going to be happening and adjusting to that, which was difficult. And took a lot of skill, took a ton of skill that's totally lost in today's rating. This does not happen anymore at all. So that is EverQuest, and it was probably, we'll never see that to that level again. We might in Pantheon. I'm going to bring that up a little later, as how we might see this kind of show itself again, or how they might make this happen again in Pantheon. But on the grand scheme of things, I think people do prefer the way rating is transitioned to it is now. And that is quite simply, let's do another notepad. Quite simply, you have the raid leader. Sometimes you have a master looter. Then you have your raiders. That's it. These are all main position. This isn't even including your raiders. Okay, they're your whatever raider guys. These are all like positions in a raid. And typically, you don't even have master looter. Usually the raid leader does master loot. So in typical raids today, you have raiders and a raid leader. That's it. 10 to 20, even 30 people, you still just have a raid leader and raiders. And all these raiders take direction from a raid leader. And I think communication and add-ons and all sorts of things have made this more possible today, and the environment, the actual raids themselves. So that is why it was so difficult in EverQuest. It was super hard. And then on top of that, this is the last point I'm going to make. I'm not going to get through this. Taking too much time. Last point I'm going to make about EverQuest is that these raid encounters were one per server, and they would reset once a week. So the exclusiveness, the amount of effort you had to put in, this would be crazy. You had to go out and you had to fight other guilds for dominance over these mobs, or at least work it out with them politically. So you had a whole other bunch of stuff going on in the background, like diplomacy, and working it across a server with other players. Basically, it's crazy. It's just absolutely nuts how hard it was to raid an EverQuest. And it was rare. The top of the top, the best players who actually put the time into it and had the ability to control this type of situation or system, or participate in that system, handle that type of pressure. Imagine being a main puller on a raid. If you screw up a pull, like you guys have been going for 6 hours, you're doing really well, and then you screw up a pull and you get the raid wiped. Just imagine how that feels. All of it's reset. Anyway, crazy amount of pressure. Wasn't for the faint of heart, let me tell you. All right. Okay. Whew. Okay, now let's move over to... Let's move over to... I'm going to use World of Warcraft as my my bouncer. Again, this is his Pantheon. Is Pantheon the right game for you? And I'm trying to break apart the way old school gamers and new school gamers are looking, or at least communicate with each other in this regard of what is hardcore. What does it mean to be a challenging hardcore game? What does it mean to be a watered down MMO? What does that even mean? So let's go over to World of Warcraft real quick. Luckily, World of Warcraft can make this really easy. I've done this before because they track everything. Everything's tracked. WoW Progress is a tracked site. Got it. Thanks, bro. It's a tracked site. Everything's tracked. Okay? Okay, is that understood? So this is the current raid that's out. Here's it in heroic difficulty and mythic difficulty. So you can set your raid to multiple difficulties. Now, let's whip out the calculator. Of all the raiding guilds that this thing pulls from WoW Armory. So it's not like guilds have to upload this data. It pulls from WoW Armory and it scans however often, whatever. So it's pretty darn accurate. And this is how many guilds have participated in the raid. So we've got 66 guilds total worldwide that have beaten Jihoon in Mythic Uldar. And it's been out for, I think, about I think people have been trying for maybe like 19 to 25 days so far, which is pretty long. But 0.19%, okay? But to make this even more relevant, let's take, what did I do earlier? So 22,058 guilds have beaten, I think that's actually an inaccurate way to do it. But anyways, let's just leave it at that. I'm not going to take any math out of this. I think this number should be boosted a little bit just for, because I think this goes over how many guilds period exist. So how many guilds period exist, or how many guilds actually report on this site, which is way more than whatever. So this number is a bit skewed, 0.19%. Even if it was 5%, that's absolutely insane as far as how difficult this is. And people are spending, I could just give you my raid schedule. I was a Mythic Raid Guild back in the day. I raided 3 days a week and 3 hours a night. That's 9 hours. That was on the really low end, 9 hours a week. Some guilds, not so much this expansion, I think, but some guilds would do split raids. Split raids, which would be, I think they raided 6 hours across 3 different tunes a week. So that was 18 hours a week across 3 different tunes, just to be competitive in Mythic raiding in World of Warcraft. To be competitive, to even get that, again, those were people going for world first that were like split rating. That's craziness. But this number will not get that much bigger. This 0.19%, I really doubt you'll see this get above 3%. That is super, super hard. And a lot of the EverQuest people say, I don't like dumbed down raids where you have a heads up display telling you everything that's going on in your face. Like, let's go to my stupid channel here. YouTube, you know, I don't even know why I'm going here for this. But, for example, if you have no idea what I'm even talking about, you know, I have some stuff down here. Here we go. No, that's not what I want. Oh, boy, sorry. That's probably really loud. But anyway, this is a raid I did, and here's me raid leading it. I've got all these tools over here telling me all the cooldowns of the raid. I've got right here, dang it. I've got right here where it's telling me where things are going to happen. Shattered Smash is going to happen in whatever. It's going to tell me what's happening, and it moves down in the middle, and it's like, next mark for death is in 2.7 seconds. There's a lot, and it says, here's my little range checker. If you turn on the volume here, you can see as I move around, my range checker will pop up as players get close to me. See, I'm so good. Nobody gets near me. There you go. See? Now it's like, oh, red, like, stop. You're doing it wrong, bro. So there's a lot of things going on here that is telling me what's happening in the raid, and it's still insanely difficult. This took us months to beat this fight with all this information. So, and I think they've tuned the raids with this in mind. EverQuest, it wasn't tuned that way. Now, they're both super hard. Both super hard. EverQuest, super hard. WoW, super hard. So raids are super hard. All raids are super hard. They're freaking really hard. So where does this whole challenging, watered down business come in? Right? What does that even mean? And what does Pantheon mean when they say that? That's what I'm trying to say. So when we're like, oh man, I'm tired of those raids with those heads-up displays, that's what a lot of old school gamers are saying. I want a real challenge. They're both really challenging. I think what you want is a specific type of gameplay, and I don't think this is coming back. This business here. Those 30-man, 40-man raids. I mean, there might be some instances, but I don't think this type of organization system that EQ really put forward, it was kind of archaic and barbaric. It was using an actual, like, I mean, they built their own system pretty much for raiding. I don't even think raiding was really a thing when the game came out. It wasn't, they didn't really expect it to happen, and players just made it happen. So, interestingly enough, now it's moving on here. Got my little notes. So we covered what it's like to be an EQ raider and a WoW raider. I didn't really go into WoW raiding because it's so simple. There's a raid leader and there's raiders. Sometimes there is, what do you call it? Master looter. No big deal. Difference between MMOs and other games difficulty. So interesting, MMOs, you can't set the difficulty in an MMO. Can't. Any other game out there, you can. You know, pick any game, any single player game. You know, shooters, I've been playing Fallout 4 lately. You can set that to survival. You can set it to easy. You can make the game very hardcore and challenging, or you can make the game super easy. If you go into like any MOBA, or the little dudes that move across the screen to fight each other, you can go into like hero leagues, or you can go to quick play. So a lot of other games out there have that built into them. Now, World of Warcraft, I think this is where the watered down comes in. Is that what I'm getting to next? World of Warcraft, for example, is like a theme park situation. They have decided to allow you to do the content despite how hard it is. Now, they've changed the content. I think it's, and the players, I don't think they really realize that when they play it. You're not, like when you beat the raid on LFG or LFR or whatever, you're beating it on LFR, which is like stupid nothing. There's nothing, it's the easiest. You could go AFK and people, that's actually a thing. People go AFK in there and put people on follow and just like spam one key, and they put determination into the raid. So if you wiped enough, you would get a buff that increases your power by across the board by 5%, 10%, 15, 20, 25, 30. You could keep going until you won. There would be no way you could lose it. You cannot lose LFR. It's impossible. Even if one person was fighting, it would make you so strong eventually, the point where you'd win. At least at some point. They may have changed it a little bit now. They're always changing it to try to make it less ridiculous, because then more people go AFK when they did that. So, that's their own problem. We're not going to talk about LFR. But yeah. Whew, man, I'm talking baloney a lot here. All right. So let's kind of reset mentally. Let me take a little sip here. Getting a little heated. All right. So, I wonder if I'm even still streaming. Yep, we're still streaming. All right, so moving on. The most difficult thing that I find for MMOs is they need to identify with their audience, okay? And how do they do that? That is really tough. Lately, a thing's been coming up across, especially Destiny 2 has really pulled this into the limelight, I guess you could call it, is the amount of time should games accommodate our real life schedules with their systems. That is pretty much what WoW has done. WoW, World of Warcraft has done that. I don't know if you follow Destiny 2 at all, but they came out with a recent release and they made it rather challenging in general across the board. They took out a lot of you had to really spend a lot of time and put a lot of effort into it to get into the raid like other people did, and a lot of people were upset. Insane amount of people. Granted, they could raid the next week. It's just week 1, I guess. They couldn't raid. And people were saying they should have taken my real life into account. Now, I'm really simplifying that, but that's kind of what they were saying. So Pantheon needs to consider us as when it's considering its audience, it has to ask the question, how much do we consider our players' time? And one thing I looked at for that, or I kind of went through, and man, this system is crazy. Here we go. When I went through it, what they need to consider is a lot of stuff. They need to consider our real life, the game world itself, our internet connections, quests, crafting, death, time, skill, and that's how much these systems really interact with one another. Understanding of core systems, our understanding as players, and then understanding of add-on or subsystems that assist the players, so how well the players are able to leverage systems to complete their content. The social space, drama, like that's going to come into play when they create these systems. It's going to create potentially drama between players and guilds, especially when raiding monsters, raiding raid bosses. What kind of communication skills will the players have? When you're building your encounters, if players have amazing communication or terrible communication, how's that going to influence things? And then you have flying mounts, travels, and taxis. Those are just some things I came up with that will influence how they approach their audience. They have to think about these things. This really feels like I'm doing school over here. I really don't make it. I don't mean to make it that way, but I'm getting so close. Again, the question is, are you hardcore enough for Pantheon Rise of the Fallen as a player? All right, so I think I'm ready to move into Watered Down. So when Brad McQuaid, this really frustrates me. Why I even went into this is when Joppa and or Chris Perkins and Brad McQuaid are on any podcast or are on anything, basically any of the VR team, when they respond to the question, what type of game is Pantheon going to be, they get like a quick 20 seconds to really summarize. And that's an MMO that harkens back. It's going to be challenging, and there's going to be severe penalties for death, and it's going to increase a more social interaction between players and create more social space and encourage people to group up and harken back to a time long once past with modern concepts and updates to a lot of the quality of life systems that have been updated that have come to be in present MMOs. Okay? What does that even mean? What does he mean when he says that? That's what I've been struggling with to really understand. Now, it sounds good on paper, but how does that actually play out in Pantheon? How do you make that play out in Pantheon? I think that's what I've really come to as far as understanding that statement. So, how does that play out in Pantheon? Let's see how that... Well, actually, yeah, that's what they say, and they get that little limited time. Before I say how that plays out in Pantheon, let's go over to World of Warcraft right now. So how World of Warcraft responded to this is they put things in their game. Obviously, it's a theme park. You can teleport anywhere, do anything you want. And you can raid. You can complete the raid. You can complete any raid on a very low difficulty. So no matter who you are, you can complete some content in World of Warcraft. But you can maybe feel like you're completing all the content. They make you perceive like you're doing all their content when you're not. And that really takes away from the content, in my opinion. And I think that's what... Ooh. Yeah, I don't know if you guys can hear that. Sorry, there's like a truck thing that turned on outside. It doesn't look like you guys can hear it. So... that's what I think with Brad McQuaid. When he's saying watered down content, that's what he means. I'm probably going to do this again because I feel like I could butter this up. But anyways, now maybe this might be it. So when Brad McQuaid's saying watered down content, I think that's what we're referring to, is that especially World of Warcraft's a great example. They take awesome raids, they take awesome systems in their game, and they create, which is unique to, like I said, MMOs don't get a difficulty meter. They create difficulty meter settings across their activities, in essence losing the awesomeness of those activities, like raiding in general. If you haven't completed a mythic raid, it's insane. It's absolutely difficult. It's so freaking hard, and when you beat it, the feeling you get for doing that is incredible. When you do LFR, it's boringest thing you've ever done. Like, I've spent I don't know, a month and a half to 2 months on one encounter every night, 3 hours a night. Excuse me, not every night. 9 hours a week for 1.5 months. Just boss pull after boss pull after boss pull, changing up the strategy, slowly getting better at it. It was super hard. We didn't suck. We were doing good. I think it was the goblin guy in Siege of Orgrimmar. I forget his name. You know, I did it that much. It was after the dinosaur. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But guess I don't even know. I could look it up, but I'm not going to. But yeah, so that's watered down. So what is that? What if you don't water it down? What does that look like? And this is what it looks like. And I think Visionary Realms doesn't want to say this because they don't. But in reality, this is what it is. Are you hardcore enough for Pantheon Rise of the Fallen? In my opinion, if you are hardcore enough for it or cool enough for it, what that means, it doesn't mean you're an awesome player. It doesn't mean anything. All it means is you're willing to pay for a product that you will not experience every aspect of, knowing that you won't experience every aspect of that product. You're buying a game knowing full well that you'll only experience a portion of it. And there's no way around that. Some people will experience all of it, but the majority of the people will not. The majority of people will not take down the hardest raid environments, get the most complicated epic quests completed. Majority will not complete that. you know, and in other games, they water down those systems to make you feel like you've completed them, but you haven't. I don't know if I wasted a lot of time talking about this, but that is the big points. Yeah, I put it simply here. Simply put, hardcore challenging equals something that through all your best efforts has a chance at being unattainable. That is, in my opinion, what a challenging MMO is. Through all of your best efforts, you might not even get it. There's a possibility. That's just it being challenging and hardcore and very difficult. And that is likely what it's going to be like to play Pantheon. Now, with that, I think when games like that, how they work, man, what's my time? Oh my God. I'm actually kind of making this time. And with that, I'll just wrap that up real quick. In most games, they put other things in their system, like World of Warcraft put other systems like pet battles or PvP or crafting or, you know, quests or world quests or whatever into the system, or mythic dungeons, stuff like that. Pantheon will have a really meaningful level system. They'll have meaningful travel. They'll have all sorts of other things that really will consume your time and give you a great play experience, which games have removed from their systems, and that's why it takes so long to level. That's why it takes so long to kill stuff, and all that other jazz, is because they're making it meaningful and not watering down the experience like they have in other games. That's really it. So the bottom line is, are you willing to buy something that you can't experience all the content? You know, you might not be able to, you could kill maybe one raid boss and that's it, because you don't have the time or whatever to get to the level of which you need to. Now, granted, you might too eventually down the road, but you won't get there when, you know, people will get there before you, way before you potentially. But that's not to say you'll ever achieve it. I'm sure if you keep hitting that grindstone, you'll get it eventually. I'm actually gonna kill this page. But that's it. Are you cool enough for Pantheon? Definitely. I think everybody is. But I think it's important that you go into that experience understanding that concept. And that's it. All right, guys, and that's going to wrap up this episode. If you enjoyed what you saw, please consider liking and subscribing to the notifications for future uploads that I do. My uploads are rather sporadic due to real-life commitments, but I do this as a hobby, and I enjoy doing it and try to put out as much content as I can. Of course, I wish I could put out a video every day. That's my dream. That's my dream. But until then, yeah, it's sporadic. I apologize if that bothers you. Doing my best. In any case, this topic, hopefully you enjoyed it. This is something close to me, and I really feel that when I say close to me, it hits close to what, I'm not sure how to word it, but it's just very important to me. And I feel like a lot of the times when VR has the opportunity to respond to these questions, the format in which they respond to it is very difficult, and it's also something very difficult for them to express. What do they mean challenging? I'm sure they know exactly what they mean in their heads, but to say it to us and have it be absorbed correctly, or I'm not sure what I'm really, you know, for it to be perceived by us correctly or not turned off to the title by what they mean by that. I'm sure majority of us want, you know, they'll be like, yeah, sounds great. But at the end of the day, they got to be kind of careful with how they say it, because we live in 2018, ladies and gentlemen. Anyways, guys, I'd like to say, I'm just going to wrap this up. I'm sorry. I'm tangenting already, and this is the outro. What am I doing? But hey, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you again really soon.